Here are the top stories for today, April 19, 2021. More vaccine choices. The Covaxin from India's Bharat Biotech and Johnson & Johnson's Janssen jabs are the latest to get an emergency use authority from the FDA. A shift of tone, the Department of Science and Technology will now conduct clinical trials on Ivermectin as a possible treatment for COVID-19. Hong Kong enforces a 2-week travel ban on 3 countries due amid reports of imported COVID-19 cases, including the Philippines. Some 1,300 workers are seen to be affected by the measure. And a beach destination in Palawan opens its doors to tourists except for those coming from the NCR Plus area. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. 2 more COVID-19 vaccines are now approved for emergency use in the country. The Food and Drug Administration says it has approved the application of India's Bharat Biotech Covaxin and Johnson & Johnson's Janssen jabs for emergency use authorization. FDA Director General Eric Domingo says guidelines must be set first before the rollout of Janssen jabs. This as the United States FDA is investigating cases of blood clotting allegedly caused by Janssen vaccines. Domingo, however, says the benefits of the vaccine outweighs the risks, citing that there is only 1 case of blood clotting in every 1 million people who were inoculated. Both vaccines can be administered to people aged 18 and above. The Janssen jabs are approved for emergency use in over 40 countries. Other vaccines that have secured emergency use authorization in the country are Sinovac, Pfizer-BioNTech, AstraZeneca, and Gamaleya. Meanwhile, Sinopharm and Moderna have yet to apply for an EUA from the FDA. The country is set to conduct clinical trials on the use of anti-parasitic drug Ivermectin. DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña said the clinical trial may take around 6 months, but this would be shorter if there would be many volunteers. De la Peña said he and Health Secretary Francisco Duque III decided to hold the clinical trials in a bid to find treatments for COVID-19. The Department of Health has allocated a fund for the clinical trials to be led by Dr. Eileen Wang of the University of the Philippines, Manila. De la Peña compared the Ivermectin clinical trial to the ongoing clinical trial on the efficacy of virgin coconut oil as an adjunct therapy for COVID-19. The agency is also studying the use of Lagundi as another therapeutic that could help in the recovery of COVID-19 patients. It is also looking into the potential of an anti-dengue supplement, Tawa-Tawa, to help patients infected with the COVID virus. President Rodrigo Duterte is pleased with the pace of the country's vaccination rollout. He says it is proof that the government is doing its best to ensure that more Filipinos are protected against COVID-19. The country has reportedly administered over 1.4 million doses of Sinovac and AstraZeneca jabs to Filipinos since March. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez said the Philippines rank 3rd in the Southeast Asian region in terms of COVID-19 vaccination after Indonesia and Singapore. Despite delays in the arrival of COVID-19 vaccine doses, President Duterte said the performance of Galvez is more than acceptable. The Philippines aims to secure 148 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines from several companies to inoculate an initial 50 to 70 million Filipinos this year. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said the government is working hard to ensure that the country can secure almost 14 million vaccine doses from 4 vaccine manufacturers. In his report to President Rodrigo Duterte, Galvez said the delivery of 1.5 million doses of Sinovac jabs is expected to be completed within April. The government is expecting another 500,000 doses to be delivered on April 22nd and another 500,000 doses on April 29. An initial 20,000 doses of the Russian-made Sputnik V jabs from Gamaleya are also expected to arrive this week, while its second tranche of 480,000 doses will be delivered before the end of April. Galvez said the government is also expecting the shipment of 195,000 Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine doses by the end of April or early May. AstraZeneca vaccines may also arrive from the COVAX facility within the month. For the month of May, Galvez said the government expects at least 2 million doses of Sinovac vaccines to be delivered to the country, along with 1 to 2 million Sputnik V doses and 194,000 Moderna doses. He said the government is also working with the World Health Organization, Gavi, and UNICEF for the possible delivery of Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines under the COVAX facility. And in June, he said, the government expects to receive 7 to 8 million vaccine doses, which include 4.5 million doses of Sinovac, 2 million doses of Sputnik V, and 1.3 million doses of AstraZeneca. The Philippines ranks third among countries in the ASEAN region in the number of citizens that have been vaccinated, and 41st out of 173 countries worldwide, and 14th among 47 Asian nations. Meanwhile, Philippine Ambassador to the United States Jose Manuel Romualdez confirms more vaccines will arrive in the Philippines from the United States. In his taped interview with presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, Romualdez said close to 200,000 doses of Moderna will arrive on June 15 and would increase in the succeeding months until it has completed sending 20 million jabs. He also said that Moderna is developing booster shots which can be administered regardless of the brand of COVID-19 vaccine jabs. He said that Pfizer vaccines will also start to arrive next month. He also assured that majority of the Filipinos will be vaccinated before the end of the year.
Ito kung ma-approve ng EUA ito sometime around September, babagay yan sa mga those that were able to take yung Sinovac, for instance, or yung AstraZeneca. They can use this booster shot. It will not. It will complement it, as a matter of fact, to give it that push, to give it the more effectivity, especially itong mga bagong mga variants na dumadating sa atin ngayon.
Despite President Rodrigo Duterte's desire to remain friends with China, he said he will send gray ships to the West Philippine Sea should China start to drill for oil. If this happens, the Philippines would also start doing the same.
Addressing myself to the Chinese government, we want to remain friends. We want to share whatever it is. Sinabi ko naman sa inyo sa Chinese government, I'm not so much interested now in fishing. I don't think there's enough fish really to worry about. But when we start to mine, when we start to get whatever it is in the bowels of the China Sea, we will send my ships there. I will send my gray ships there to state a claim. Noon ko pa sinabi yan. Yung pagkatapos na nag-usap kami ni President Xi Jinping na sinabi ko na I will get my oil also. Sabi niya, please don't. We just leave it that way. In the meantime,
on July 12, 2016, the Philippines won the arbitration case it lodged against China after the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, Netherlands, invalidated Beijing's 9-line claim over the contested waters. China refused to acknowledge the arbitral ruling. President Duterte admitted that there is no way that the country can reclaim the West Philippine Sea without any bloodshed. He warned that promoting a war against China would have serious consequences. Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque earlier said that the president is unbothered about rumors that a group of retired and active military officers have allegedly withdrawn support for him over his supposed silence on Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea. Roque said President Duterte believes that the military officers would have ousted him a long time ago if they believed that he was useless.
Hindi po nababahala ang presidente. Alam po ng presidente tapat siya sa saligang batas at alam po niya na rinirespeto rin ng ating mga kasundaluhan ang ating saligang batas. Sabi nga po niya, kung talagang siya ay inutil, matagal na siyang pinatalsik ng militar. No? So alam po niya na kung gugustuhin ng militar, kahit sino, pwede patanggal ng militar, pero kampante po siya na walang dahilan para naman umakto ng ganyan ang ating kasundaluhan.
Malacanang says it does not see the emergence of community pantries in the country as a condemnation of the government's efforts to provide aid to Filipinos affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In a tweet on Sunday, former Vice President Jeju Marbinay earlier said the message behind the rise of community pantries is the desire of Filipinos to look after one another amid an absent government. Senator Panfilo Lacson meanwhile considered community pantries as a sign of desperation that people can no longer rely on the government. For Senator Grace Poe, the community pantries is a wake-up call for the government to do more to address people's needs. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the community pantries are the representation of the best in the Filipino character. While he acknowledged the government's slow distribution of cash aid, he said families affected by the pandemic and quarantine status will continue to receive government assistance and more aid is forthcoming. To date, Roque said only 4 billion pesos of the 23 billion pesos allocated for the program has been distributed.
Hindi po tayo ng paumanhin dahil talagang medyo may kabagalan, pero sa panahon po kasi ng pandemya, hindi natin maiiwasan na talagang mag-ingat dahil baka mamaya mabigay nga yung ayuda, magkaroon naman ng COVID yung mga taong bayan.
In related reports, Catholic prelates lauded the establishment of community pantries across the country. Bishop Broderick Pabilio says the initiative shows that people are ready to help and it is also a very good way of spreading generosity and bayanihan among Filipinos. Pabilio urges parishes under the Archdiocese to follow the initiative. Pasig Bishop Milo Hubert Vergara also supported the initiative, which is now being replicated in other areas in the country. Kidapawan Bishop Jose Colin Bagaforo, National Director of Caritas Philippines, also applauded the efforts of individuals who initiated the establishment of the different pantry communities in Manila and the whole country. He calls on all individuals, families, and communities to establish these kindness stations in their areas. At least 79 community pantries have already been established across the country since April 14. Still to come, President Duterte is willing to lift the executive order on reduced import duties on pork as soon as the domestic supply improves. And Hong Kong's temporary ban on flights from the Philippines and 2 other countries takes effect today. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Pangalagaan ng sarili laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Hanggat maaari, umiwas sa mataong lugar. Iwasang hawakan ang ilong at bibig, maging malinis sa katawan at ugaliin ang wastong paghuhugas ng kamay. Takpan ang ilong at bibig kung uubo o babahing. Umiwas sa mga taong nagpapakita ng sintomas ng coronavirus disease gaya ng lagnat, ubo at sipon. Magsuot ng face mask kung kinakailangan. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
President Rodrigo Duterte said he is willing to withdraw his executive order reducing pork tariffs as soon as there is an improvement in the country's domestic supply. He said he understood the sentiments of senators calling to revoke his executive order. On Thursday, the Senate Committee of the Whole adopted a resolution asking President Duterte to revoke Executive Order number 128 that reduces the tariff on pork importation over concerns that lower tariff might kill the local hog industry. President Duterte assured senators that the executive order is temporary and could be lifted once prices of pork go down. Acting Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua reiterated support for lower pork tariffs, emphasizing the need to address the deficiency in supply while bringing down the country's inflation rate.
I can understand from where the senators come from. There is also the domestic supply, which they intend to protect. It's just a temporary measure, really, to bring down the prices, but the senators see it in different light.
Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the president listens and the president knows that under our Constitution, Congress has primary jurisdiction when it comes to tariff rates. Roque said the president respects the power of the Congress to withdraw or terminate his EO through a joint resolution. He also assured that Agriculture Secretary William Dar continues to enjoy the president's trust despite recommending the passage of the EO, which reduces pork tariffs.
Kung magdedesisyon po ang Kongreso natin, ang Senado at ang Kamara na talagang bawiin yung executive order ng ating presidente, yan naman po ay saklaw ng kapangyarihan ng Kongreso at rerespetuhin po yan ng ating presidente.
The Presidential Electoral Tribunal said the election protest filed by Ferdinand Marcos Jr. failed to substantiate his allegations of massive anomalies and irregularities. In its 93-page decision on February 16, the court said Marcos failed to make out his case since there is no substantial recovery of votes in the pilot provinces that he himself had designated. The court noted that the PET Rule number 65 provides for the outright dismissal of the protest if the protester fails to show reasonable recovery of votes after the revision and appreciation of ballots from 3 pilot areas. The Marcos Robredo case is the first election protest before the tribunal in which the recount and revision of the pilot provinces were completed. Some 1,300 overseas Filipino workers would be affected by Hong Kong's 2-week ban on flights from the Philippines, which took effect on Tuesday. The Philippines Overseas Employment Administration said also that most of the affected workers are household service workers. POEA Chief Bernard Olalia, however, assured that the temporary travel ban will not stop them from continuously processing the documents of applicants. Olalia reported that prior to the pandemic, the country is sending 13,000 OFWs to Hong Kong every month and more or less 168,000 annually. Reports said Hong Kong will ban flights from the Philippines, India, and Pakistan for 14 days starting April 20. These countries were classified as extremely high risk due to multiple imported cases, including the highly transmissible N501Y coronavirus variant. Ilocos Norte has started using saliva testing to boost COVID-19 detection and response in the province. Meanwhile, Zamboanga City relaxes its border control for vaccinated travelers. More on these and other news from the provinces from Janice Cabe.
Ilocos Norte is partnering with the Philippine Red Cross for the implementation of saliva testing as an alternative to the existing COVID-19 facilities in the province. PRC in Ilocos Norte Administrator Edna Orsino said saliva tests are priced at 2,000 pesos per test, which is cheaper by 50% than swab testing. Results are expected in 24 to 48 hours. Saliva testing is accepted in provincial border checkpoints. As of March 2021, the PRC said it has already performed 2 million COVID-19 tests nationwide. In Cebu City, the city government on Monday started the inoculation of senior citizens against COVID-19 in the Northern District. The vaccination for senior citizens at the Robinson's Galleria in the North Reclamation Area and University of Cebu in Banilad went ahead as planned. Vice Mayor Michael Rama also led an initiative as part of the city's COVID-19 vaccine storm rollout program. Serwin Eviota, head of Cebu Citizens Initiative, introduced during the press conference the initiatives conceptualized by the private sector to ramp up awareness on the importance of vaccination to end the pandemic. Meanwhile, the city government of Zamboanga will no longer require a negative RT-PCR result from fully vaccinated persons who are entering the city. City Health Officer Dr. Dulce Amor Miravite said a person is considered fully immunized 2 weeks after receiving the second dose of vaccine and that there is no more need for them to undergo an RT-PCR test. However, those fully vaccinated persons showing symptoms of COVID-19 will still be required to undergo an RT-PCR test even if they show their certificate of vaccination. Some 3,019 medical frontliners in the A1 category have already received their second dose of either Sinovac or AstraZeneca vaccines. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
The Department of Agriculture said there will be a calibrated arrival of pork imports in the country as the executive order which reduces pork tariffs takes effect. During a House committee hearing, Agriculture Secretary William Dar said Executive Order 128, which reduces the tariff on pork importation, is already in effect. Dar assured that imports will be properly managed with a hope that imports will lower the prices of pork in the market. Dar said the DA would also study the imposition of price ceiling on imported pork products. To protect local hog raisers from bankruptcy, the Senate Committee of the Whole adopted Joint House Resolution 37 asking President Rodrigo Duterte to revoke EO 128. House Committee on Agriculture and Food Chairman Mark Enverga said allowing importation beyond the shortage and with a lower tariff will cause oversupply not only in Luzon but also in the Visayas and Mindanao where there is enough pork. The Anti-Red Tape Authority, or ARTA, has vowed to facilitate the application of potential COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers in the country. In a statement, ARTA plans to streamline processes by establishing a green lane for faster processing of permit applications. ARTA Director General Jeremiah Belhica said they will be inviting the Department of Health, Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Securities and Exchange Commission to discuss how the government can fast-track applications. He said there is also ARTA's response to President Rodrigo Duterte's statement to support potential investors for COVID-19 vaccine production in the country. Last week, DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez bared that companies looking into putting up vaccine manufacturing plants in the country requested for a green lane on government permits. Up next, the Kalinga provincial government warns the tragic road mishap that claimed 13 lives. And NASA gives a view of Mars as it holds the first helicopter flight on the red planet. Details ahead. Stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Alamin ang mga dapat gawin sa lugar ng trabaho laban sa coronavirus disease 2019. Ang mga kumpanya ay dapat magbigay ng face mask sa kanilang mga empleyado. Bukod dito, magbigay kaalaman din patungkol sa COVID-19. Siguraduhing malinis ang kapaligiran. Maglagay ng sabon at hand sanitizer sa mga palikuran. Siguraduhing ligtas at nalutong maigi ang mga pagkain sa kantina. Obserbahan ang kalusugan ng mga empleyado at katrabaho. Kung sakali man na mayroon silang sintomas ng coronavirus disease, gaya ng lagnat, ubot-sipon at hirap sa paghinga, ay agad ipasuri sa doktor. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. The provincial government of Kalinga is grieving over the loss of 13 lives in a vehicular accident on Sunday night. In a statement, the provincial government asked the community for a minute of silence and prayer for the deceased and the bereaved families. Governor Ferdinand has instructed the Provincial Social Work and Development Office to extend all possible assistance to the families. The police said the black sports utility vehicle driven by jail officer Soy Lope Agtulao with 14 passengers fell into an irrigation canal at Barangay Bulo in Tabuk. The group were on their way to Bulo Lake when Agtulao suddenly lost control of the vehicle. 13 of them died from drowning despite the efforts of rescuers to revive them. Edith Perez survived along with the jail officer's 10-year-old child, Cyril. A Filipino company is investing about 950 million pesos in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao to revive the banana industry in the region. Chris Crismundo has the story.
The Regional Board of Investments of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao has approved the registration of Al Muzaffar Agriventure that would pour in 950 million pesos worth of investments in the region's banana industry. The firm, also known as the Amavi Sweet Banana, plans to establish Cavendish banana plantations in Datu Abdullah Sangki and other municipalities. The investment is expected to produce 2 million to 3.3 million boxes of bananas for export to Japan, China, and the Middle East annually. This is seen to help revive the banana industry, which has been declining due to plant disease and other factors. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources in Central Visayas has partnered with Anti-Crime and Community Emergency Response Team or AntiRed for the strengthening of the region's anti-illegal fishing campaign. BFAR's 7 Regional Director Dr. Alan Poquita said AntiRed members will serve as volunteer units or force multipliers and mutual partners in fishery law enforcement. One of BFAR's enforcement mandates is to prohibit commercial operators from fishing in the municipal waters. Commercial fishing boat operators are warned that they will face the consequences if they continue to violate fishery laws, including illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. In other news, the Department of Labor and Employment in Antique has been allocated 19 million pesos for the hiring of 4,000 individuals under the Tulong Panghanap Buhay sa Ating Disadvantaged Displaced Program, or TUPAD. Vice Governor Edgar Denosta said the workers who would be hired by the Dole Antique Provincial Office could help in disinfection and maintenance of environmental sanitation, community or backyard gardening, and other priority works identified by the municipalities. The province is also waiting for additional workers who would be hired as contact tracers under the same program. The TUPAD workers who will be hired to work for 10 days will receive a daily wage of 395 pesos. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismundo.
In our overseas news, the U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, on Monday announced it has conducted the first helicopter flight on planet Mars. The Ingenuity helicopter, which was attached to the Perseverance rover, landed on the red planet on February 18, was initially planned for a flight on April 8. NASA pushed back the launch of the first flight of the surface of Mars in March. The space agency previously said controlled flight with Ingenuity in Mars will be more complex than on Earth because Mars has lower gravity and an atmosphere just 1% as dense as the Earth's at the surface. Energy and temperature changes will also be an issue. Are you ready for a summer escapade? The town of El Nido in Palawan might be your next beach destination unless you are from the NCR Plus bubble. The El Nido Tourism Office said tourists from Metro Manila, Cavite, Laguna, Bulacan, and Rizal are restricted from entering the municipality until further notice. Tourists traveling to El Nido from the outside Palawan are required to have valid identification and a quick response coded tourist ID. To receive a QTID, a tourist must have a negative RT-PCR test taken 72 hours before arrival, a hotel booking, and a return ticket. Those staying for more than 7 days shall accomplish an antigen test on their 8th day in El Nido. Those going to El Nido from within Palawan are required to have a valid ID, a QTID, which only requires a hotel booking and a negative antigen test result taken within the last 24 hours before arrival. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. More vaccine choices. The Covaxin from India's Bharat Biotech and Johnson & Johnson's Janssen jabs are the latest to get an emergency use authority from the FDA. A shift of tone, the Department of Science and Technology will now conduct clinical trials on Ivermectin as a possible treatment for COVID-19. Hong Kong enforces a 2-week travel ban on 3 countries due amid reports of imported COVID-19 cases, including the Philippines. Some 1,300 workers are seen to be affected by the measure. And a beach destination in Palawan opens its doors to tourists, except for those coming from the NCR Plus area. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day. Stay safe, everyone.